Hello there, Juranish Whiskey Lore, and time for another whiskey tasting. And today, I'm going to be doing a tasting of a whiskey that I talked to Alan Anderson of Carpathian not too long ago. We went through and did a tasting of this very interesting single malt whiskey. It is Romania's first single malt, and this is a limited edition version that is done in wine casks. And not only is it done in wine casks, utilizing grain that came from Romania, those wine casks are also a Romanian style of wine. Feteasca Neagra, I'm probably saying that wrong. This was bottled in 2022, bottle number 126 of 310. So I feel honored to drink this. 43% ABV. There's nothing listed on here about chill filtering or the rest. Remember that from our conversation, actually. And Romania. What do you know about Romania? Romania is one of those places I'd love to go visit someday because I know very little about it. In fact, the only thing that I know about Romania is basically that is where Dracula is supposed to come from. Transylvania is in Romania. And the place that everybody always goes, because it's really kind of promoted to be Dracula's castle, is Castle Braun, which isn't far from where the distillery is. The problem with that, though, is that two things. One, people associate a tyrant by the name of Vlad the Impaler, who got his name from basically putting spikes up through people through an area you don't want to have a spike put up through. And so Vlad, not a very lovely person, well, he became the inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula. And that wasn't totally by chance, because Vlad the Impaler's actual name was Vlad III Dracul, which Dracul at that time in 1400s was a Romanian word for dragon, because his father was actually in the Order of the Dragon, which were basically a chivalrous group who was tasked with the concept of keeping the Ottoman Empire from taking over Europe. And so think of the Turks, the Ottoman Empire. They didn't want them invading into Europe, and so the Order of the Dragon were supposed to keep this under wraps. Now, if you look up Dracul in Romanian now, it will mean devil. So the language evolved over time, and it's kind of fitting, actually, because Vlad and his sort of dark reputation. The thing, too, if you plan a trip, the castles of Eastern Europe are absolutely beautiful. And this one, Castle Bran, is no slouch at all. Definitely one worth seeing. Some Czech, my heritage Czech artistic work done inside of that castle. So definitely one to go see, and they will tell you about Vlad the Impaler and Dracula, but understand that if he ever was there, he was a prisoner there. That was not where he actually ruled from. So interesting. Anyway, again, more lore kind of builds up over time, and what's interesting is the description. Apparently, I'm not at all into vampires, so I do not speak from deep knowledge here, but from what I understand, Bram Stoker didn't necessarily have that castle in mind when he wrote his stories. It just evolved into that being the castle that became associated with Dracula and Vlad the Impaler. All right, let's jump in and do a little nosing and tasting on this very, very interesting whiskey that starts out in the first fill bourbon barrel and then ends up in those Romanian wine casks. And one thing that I noticed, there's a minerally note between the two different styles of Carpathian whiskey that I've had. So I'm assuming that it's probably coming from the barley that they are using from Romania. And this has a nice tart baked apple with baking spices note to it. It's a very interesting nose, and it comes at you with more of almost like the rhubarb-esque sour note, but it's not sour. It just kind of heads in that direction. And it took me a long time to figure this whiskey out, to go, how could I label that? But I'm used to baked apple being a little sweeter, but I have had a tart baked apple pie, and that's exactly where this is going in terms of the nose. Cheers. Caramel toffee first out of the gate. So the bourbon barrel does its job, but then it just pounds in with the fruit notes, some of that cinnamon, nice bit of cinnamon laying there on the palate. There's I want to say it's like a grilled pineapple, a little barbecue note that comes in on this whiskey. Really, really fascinating flavor, and unlike anything I've really tasted before. It is impressive. I mean, it's gonna be one of those whiskeys that when you first taste it, you might go, really? I think if you're a fan of peated whiskeys, even though this really isn't necessarily, I mean, it has that barbecue smoke kind of an idea to it. But man, to say if you came from a smoky whiskey into this, I think you would really like this whiskey. And it has a, grilled pineapple, man. That is grilled pineapple, if ever I tasted it. Little peppery note at the end, and a little bit of char comes in, but really nicely done. Really nicely done whiskey. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, give me a like. If you want to support the channel, you can go out to patreon.com/whiskeylore. I put extra content out there as well, including some extra stories and much more. And check out my interview with Alan. He's an interesting character to know that he started out in Scotch whiskey, moved to Irish whiskey, and is now into Romanian whiskey. So he is getting around. Until next time, cheers and Slainte Jabab. Really, really interesting whiskey.